There is a particular quality to the air in Milan, especially in the early mornings, that suggests a kind of serious purpose. It isn't a grim seriousness, but rather a composed one. The city wakes up not with a shout, but with a steady, rhythmic hum. And if you have spent enough time watching how business is done here, you begin to realize that this rhythm extends far beyond the traffic or the opening of shop shutters. It is the rhythm of capital itself. I have often thought that money, in its most mature form, behaves very much like a deep river. It doesn't rush over the rocks, frothing and making a great deal of noise. It moves slowly. It has weight, and it tends to follow channels that were carved out a long time ago. When we talk about markets here, we are not really talking about the flashing lights or the frantic waving of hands that you might see in the movies. That is the theater of finance. The reality, the part that actually sustains the city and the industries around it, is much quieter. It is a system of participation. You see, capital here has a memory. It remembers where it has been safe before. It remembers the families and the firms that have honored their commitments over the span of decades. And because it has this memory, it tends to gather in the same places, circling around the same solid institutions. It is interesting to observe how this gathering happens. It isn't forced. You get the sense that resources are being pulled together, drawn in by the gravity of established reputation. People place their wealth into this system not because they are chasing a sudden fortune, but because they are looking for a place where their effort can be preserved. There is a profound difference between speculating and participating. In many places, the market is treated like a casino, a place to make a bet and leave. But here, the market feels more like a town square. You enter it to be part of the commerce of the day. You enter it because your father did, and his father before him. It is a long conversation that has been going on for a century or more. And this conversation relies entirely on familiarity. I have watched men in the cafes near the center, well dressed, speaking in low tones. They are not discussing the latest trend. They are discussing the health of a company, the character of a manager, the prospects of a factory outside the city. They are assessing the real things that the money represents. That is something that often gets lost in the modern world, the connection between the capital and the thing it builds. In Milan, that connection still feels very strong, almost tangible. You know that the funds circulating through these stone buildings are eventually finding their way into steel, into textiles, into design, into machinery. The market is just the mechanism for moving energy from those who have saved it to those who can build with it. It is a process of allocation that feels incredibly deliberate. Nothing happens by accident. If a venture receives support, it is because it has been weighed, measured, and understood. This slowness is a virtue. We are often told that speed is everything, that milliseconds matter. But when you are dealing with the livelihoods of thousands of people, speed is often the enemy. Speed leads to mistakes. Here, there is a preference for the pause, the contemplative moment. The document read twice. It creates an environment of stability. When you walk through the financial district, you don't feel a vibration of anxiety. You feel the solidity of the architecture. The buildings are heavy. They have thick walls and high ceilings. They were built to last, just like the fortunes they manage. And the people who work inside them seem to absorb this quality. They move with a certain restraint. There is a lack of exaggeration. You rarely hear someone making wild claims. It is considered unseemly to promise more than you can deliver. I suppose that is the essence of a mature market. It is built on the expectation of truth. Not necessarily that everyone is perfect, but that the system itself demands a level of honesty. If you break that trust, you are simply quietly excluded. The river flows around you, and you are left on the bank. This brings me back to the idea of repetition. We tend to undervalue the boring things: the filing of a report, the quarterly meeting, the annual dividend. But these repetitive acts are the heartbeat of the system. They tell us that everything is still working. They tell us that the rules are still being followed. Over time, this repetition creates a deep sense of comfort. You know what to expect. You know that in the spring, the meetings will happen. You know that in the autumn, the plans for the next year will be laid out. The seasons of the market align with the seasons of the year. It is a cycle. And because it is a cycle, it can absorb shocks. I have seen this city go through difficult times. I have seen political uncertainty, global crises, and yet the market here doesn't panic. It might slow down, it might become more cautious, but it doesn't stop. It hunkers down, waits for the weather to clear, and then continues. There is a resilience in that, a kind of stubborn refusal to be derailed. It comes from the knowledge that we have been here before. The players might change, but the game remains the same. And the game is one of stewardship. That is a word I think of often when I watch how capital moves here. Stewardship. The idea is that you are taking care of something that is not entirely yours to consume. It belongs to the future as much as it belongs to the present. You see this in the way companies are governed. There is often a strong family influence, even in the largest public firms. And while that can have its complications, it also brings a long-term perspective. A family doesn't want to loot the company for a quick profit. They want the company to exist for the grandchildren. So the market reflects that. It rewards endurance. It values the steady return over the explosive growth that risks a collapse. I find it very reassuring to be in a place where the goal is continuity. It makes the world feel a little less fragile when you know that there are systems in place, refined over generations, designed to handle the allocation of wealth. You can sleep a little better. It's not just about the big institutions either. It's about the network of smaller interactions. The lawyers, the accountants, the advisors, they all play their part in this ecosystem. They are the guardians of the process. They ensure that the paperwork is correct, that the valuations are fair. It's quiet work, it's unglamorous work, but it is the mortar that holds the bricks together. Sometimes, in the late afternoon, the light in Milan hits the buildings in a way that makes them look golden. And you see people leaving their offices, carrying their briefcases, heading home or to an aperitivo. And you realize that they are all participants in this vast, invisible web. They are not just doing a job, they are maintaining a structure that allows trade to happen, that allows innovation to be funded, that allows life to move forward. And because it is so integrated into the life of the city, the market doesn't feel like a separate, alien entity. It feels like part of the civic fabric. Just like the tram lines or the opera house, it is there to serve a function. I have noticed that in places where markets are new or where they are purely digital, there's a sense of detachment. The numbers on the screen have no connection to reality. But here, you can walk down a street and say, that factory was expanded because of a bond issue last year. Or that design firm went public and hired 50 more people. The cause and effect are visible. The capital leaves the center, does its work in the industrial periphery, and returns as profit to be distributed. It is a healthy circulation, like blood in the body. And like the body, it has its own immune system. It rejects things that don't fit. It is skeptical of the new until the new has proven itself. Some call this conservative. I call it prudent. Prudence is an old-fashioned word, isn't it? We don't hear it enough. But in the management of money, prudence is the highest virtue. It means looking down the road. It means anticipating the pothole before you hit it. The older I get, the more I appreciate this lack of excitement. I don't want my financial system to be exciting. I want it to be boringly predictable. I want it to be there when I need it, exactly as it was the day before. Milan offers that kind of boredom. It offers a sophisticated, elegant boredom. The boredom of knowing that the people in charge are serious people, that they have seen the cycle turn many times. It creates a kind of silence in the mind. You don't have to constantly check. You don't have to worry that the rules changed overnight. The rules are carved in stone, much like the facade of the exchange building. I often think about the relationship between the fog and the money here. The fog, the famous Milanese fog, softens the edges of things. It hides the details. It forces you to move slower. And the financial culture is similar. It is a bit opaque. It doesn't show you everything at once. It requires you to be patient, to wait for the shape to emerge. But when it does emerge, it is solid. It is real. This reliance on established channels also means that relationships matter more than anything else. A contract is important, yes, but a history of working together is more important. If you have been a good partner for 20 years, the market will stand by you. That is a human quality that algorithms cannot replicate. The ability to judge character, the ability to offer grace during a hard time because you know the person is good for it. These are the soft mechanisms that keep the hard machinery running. The nod across the room, the handshake that lingers a second longer. These are the signals of the market, and they are transmitted quietly, day after day. As the years pass, you see the faces change. Of course, the older generation retires, and the younger one steps up. But the younger ones have been trained. They have sat in the same rooms, listened to the same advice. They inherit the style. They inherit the caution. So the continuity remains unbroken. The thread stretches back into the past and forward into the future. It is a very calming thing to witness, to see that, despite all the noise in the world, there are places where the old virtues still hold sway, where capital is treated with respect, where the market is viewed not as a battlefield, but as a garden. A garden requires tending, it requires patience. You cannot shout at a plant to make it grow faster. You can only provide the right conditions. And that is what this system provides. The right conditions, a stable soil, a protection from the harsh winds, a regular watering. It allows for growth that is sustainable, growth that doesn't exhaust the soil. So when you look at Milan, don't just see the fashion or the industry. See the quiet, steady flow underneath it all, the river of capital that moves with such deliberate grace. It is a system that has survived wars and depressions and revolutions, and it has survived them by being exactly what it is: steady, serious, and deeply, deeply rooted. The evening comes on, and the city slows down. The doors of the great banks are locked. The ledgers are closed, but the feeling remains, the sense that everything is in its place, that the resources are safe, that the cycle will begin again tomorrow, just as it has for as long as anyone can remember. It is a quiet power, a power that doesn't need to announce itself. It just exists. And in its existence, it offers a kind of anchor, a place to hold on to. And for those of us who have seen enough of the world's volatility, that anchor is the most valuable thing of all. The knowledge that the system is working silently, effectively in the background, waiting for the morning, continuing its long, slow work.